Louis Chevrolet was a race car driver. Wild, talented, the kind of guy who drove like he was angry at the road. He came to the United States from Switzerland in 1900 with almost nothing, worked as a mechanic in Brooklyn, got noticed for his skill behind the wheel, and started winning races for Buick. The man behind Buick at the time? William C. Durant. Durant was not an engineer. He was a deal maker, a promoter, the kind of person who could sell you a car that did not exist yet and make you feel lucky to wait for it. He had already built General Motors by 1908, assembled it, really, buying up Buick, Oldsmobile, Cadillac, and Oakland like a man filling a shopping cart. But GM's board pushed him out in 1910. Too reckless, they said. Too much debt. So Durant did what any reasonable person would do. He started a new car company to take GM back, and he named it after his race driver. Here is the part most people get wrong. Louis Chevrolet designed the first car, the Classic 6, 1911. Big engine, 6 cylinders, expensive, a prestige machine. But Durant did not want prestige. Durant wanted volume. He wanted a car cheap enough to compete with Henry Ford's Model T, which was eating the entire market alive. Ford was selling the Model T for under $500. The Classic 6 cost $2,150. Louis and Durant fought about this constantly. Louis wanted to build something worthy of his name, fast, refined, European in character. Durant wanted to sell cars by the trainload. By 1913, Louis Chevrolet walked away from his own company, sold his shares back, every single one. He got almost nothing for them. Durant kept the name. Think about that for a second. The most iconic nameplate in American automotive history, and the man whose name it carries, walked away broke. Louis Chevrolet would later work as a line mechanic in a Chevrolet factory. His own name on the building, a wrench in his hand. He died in 1941, with very little to show for any of it. But the company? The company became a monster. Durant got exactly what he wanted. By 1915, Chevrolet was building affordable cars, the Series 490, named for its $490 price tag, aimed directly at the Model T. And Durant used Chevrolet's rising stock value to buy back enough GM shares to retake control of General Motors in 1916. The entire company was a chess piece, a weapon built to win a corporate war. It worked. Chevrolet was folded into GM in 1917, and from that point on, it became GM's volume brand. The car for everyone. The entry point. If Ford was giving America basic transportation, Chevrolet was giving America something just a little bit better, a little more style, a little more comfort, for not much more money. Alfred Sloan, who ran GM through the 20s and 30s, called it a car for every purse and purpose. Chevrolet sat at the bottom of the ladder. You started there, then you moved up to Pontiac, Oldsmobile, Buick, and finally, Cadillac. That ladder defined the American car industry for half a century. The 1950s changed everything, and Chevrolet changed with them. In 1953, two things happened. The Corvette appeared, fiberglass body, inline 6, a sports car from a company that had never built one. The first year was rough, only 300 made, underpowered, slow, honestly. Most people forget that the early Corvette was almost canceled. It nearly died before it became anything. Then in 1955, Chevrolet introduced the small block V8. This is not an exaggeration. That engine is one of the most important mechanical objects of the 20th century. 265 cubic inches, light, compact, powerful enough to transform every car it sat in. Ed Cole led the engineering team, and they designed it from scratch in 15 months. 15 months for an engine that would stay in production in evolved forms for more than 6 decades. The '55 Chevy with that V8 was the moment Chevrolet stopped being just the affordable option and became something people genuinely wanted. Not settled for, wanted. Drop that engine into the Corvette a year later, and suddenly you had a real sports car. Drop it into the full-size sedans, and you had sleepers that could embarrass cars costing twice as much. The small block changed the personality of the entire brand overnight. By the 1960s, Chevrolet was not just competing with Ford, it was competing with everyone. The Impala became the best-selling car in America. Over 1 million units in 1965 alone. 1 million from a single model. That number is almost impossible to comprehend today. The Chevelle arrived in 1964, the Camaro in 1967, built specifically to kill the Mustang. And it nearly did. The Nova, the Monte Carlo, the El Camino, half car, half truck, fully absurd, and somehow it worked. And then there was the Chevelle SS454, the LS6 option, 450 horsepower from the factory, and everyone who has ever looked at one on a dyno suspects the real number was higher. Chevrolet was underrating its own engines to keep insurance companies calm. That was the game in 1970. Build something outrageous. Lie about the horsepower. Let the buyer figure it out at the drag strip. If you are watching this, and you have ever wondered why older gearheads talk about the late 60s like it was a golden age, this is why. Chevrolet alone was building a half-dozen cars that could run deep into the 12s on a stock engine and street tires. That era is never coming back. Then the 70s hit, and they hit hard. Emissions regulations, the oil crisis, insurance crackdowns. The muscle car era did not fade, it was strangled. Horsepower numbers collapsed. The 1975 Corvette made 165 horsepower. The base model. That is less than a modern Camry. Chevrolet survived the 70s, but it was not pretty. The Vega, a compact car that was supposed to answer the Japanese imports, rusted so aggressively that some owners reported seeing daylight through the fenders within 2 years. The engine overheated. The aluminum block warped. GM had rushed it to market, and it showed. The Vega is still cited in engineering schools as a case study in what happens when you skip testing to meet a deadline. The Chevette followed. Cheap. Miserable to drive. It sold well because gas was expensive and options were limited, not because anyone loved it. Nobody has ever restored a Chevette out of passion. I am fairly confident about that. But here is the thing about Chevrolet. It keeps coming back. The 1982 Camaro Z28 started the recovery. The third-generation F-body was not perfect, but it was sharp-looking and it moved. The IROC Z in 1985 became an icon, partly because of the car, partly because of the era. You could not watch an 80s action movie without seeing one. The Corvette got serious again with the C4 in 1984, then genuinely world-class with the C5 in 1997. The LS1 engine in that C5 was a direct descendant of Ed Cole's small block from 1955. 42 years of evolution packed into an aluminum block that weighed less, revved higher, and made more power than anyone expected at its price point. Car magazines kept testing it against Porsches and being confused by the results. The truck side was booming too. The Silverado and the Suburban became pillars of the brand. Not glamorous, not exciting, but relentlessly profitable. By the early 2000s, GM was making more money on trucks than on everything else combined. Chevrolet trucks kept the lights on during some very dark corporate years. And the years did get dark. 2008. The financial crisis nearly killed General Motors entirely. The company filed for bankruptcy in 2009. The United States government stepped in with a bailout, roughly $50 billion. Entire brands were cut. Pontiac, gone. Saturn, gone. Hummer, gone. Oldsmobile had already been killed off in 2004. Chevrolet survived. Of course it did. You cannot kill the volume brand. It is the foundation. Without Chevrolet, there is no General Motors. The recovery was slow, but the products got better. The fifth-generation Camaro came back in 2010 after an 8-year absence. The C7 Corvette in 2014 was genuinely beautiful. The first Corvette in decades where the design did not require any apologies. And then came the C8. The 2020 Corvette broke a 67-year tradition and moved the engine behind the driver. Mid-engine. The layout Zora Arkus Duntov, the Corvette's godfather, had been pushing for since the 1960s. GM management had blocked it every time. Too expensive, too risky, too different. It took until 2020, and when it finally arrived, starting under $60,000 with a naturally aspirated V8 making 495 horsepower, the automotive press did not know what to do with it. Here was a mid-engine sports car with Ferrari proportions, Porsche-adjacent performance, and a price tag closer to a well-optioned pickup truck. Whether it still feels like a Corvette is a real debate. Some people say the soul changed when the engine moved. Others say Zora would have wept with joy. I honestly do not know which side is right. Maybe both. Today, Chevrolet is placing enormous bets on electrification. The Equinox EV, the Blazer EV, the Silverado EV, the Bolt, which was quietly one of the best-selling affordable EVs in America before it was discontinued, then undiscontinued, then… It is complicated. The transition has not been smooth. Sales targets have been missed. Battery supply chains have caused delays. The Blazer EV launched with software problems bad enough that Chevrolet temporarily paused sales. Nobody knows exactly what Chevrolet looks like in 20 years. The V8 is fading. Not dead yet, but fading. The small block that defined the brand for 7 decades is running out of road. What replaces it has to carry the same emotional weight, and no electric motor has done that yet. Not for this audience. But count Chevrolet out at your own risk. This is a brand that was born from a grudge, built by a corporate raider, named after a man who never profited from it and has survived depressions, fuel crises, bankruptcy, and every prediction of its death for over 100 years. Louis Chevrolet never saw any of it. He died 2 months before Pearl Harbor, working class to the end. His name on more cars than he could have imagined. His share of the fortune? 0. The bow tie is still on every one of them. What do you think defines Chevrolet more? The small block V8 or the Corvette? Or is it something else entirely? Drop it in the comments. I genuinely want to know. And if this is your first time here and you made it this far, you already know whether this channel is for you. Subscribe. More of this is coming.